You now stand on the threshold of one of the most unsettling and captivating ideas ever conceived: the belief that not everyone around you is truly a person, that some are what's called organic portals, soulless, reactive placeholders, woven into reality itself to keep the conscious few entangled in the matrix. This notion spreads through occult channelings, resurfaces in viral memes, and lingers in how people describe the strange emptiness of modern life. It isn't just theory, it's a whisper in the system of suspicion you can't shake. What if half the population isn't fully conscious? Not evil, not robotics, just vacant. They imitate feelings, they follow scripts, they keep the illusion running. Their very role: to crowd the real ones, keeping them distracted, sedated, asleep. If you feel this, it's because you're not one of them. That's why you're here. That's why you need to hear what comes next. Because in this video, we'll go deeper than you've ever dared. We'll uncover where this theory originated, who first spoke of it, and why it was never meant for mainstream eyes. We'll revisit ancient philosophies that described such entities long before the internet. We'll reveal how political, digital, and social systems subtly reinforce the presence of these soulless ones. And most importantly, we'll teach you how to identify them, guard your energy, and awaken fully before they shut you down for good. By the end, you won't see the world the same way again. That's exactly the point. Once you see, you can't return to sleep. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed something radical. If any civilization becomes advanced enough to simulate consciousness within virtual environments, then statistically, we are far more likely to be inside such a simulation than outside of it. His reasoning wasn't emotional, it was mathematical. The odds overwhelmingly favored the simulated. This theory leaped out of academia when Elon Musk echoed it. There's a 1 in billions chance we're in base reality, as gaming technology rapidly closes the gap between simulation and reality, Musk argued. Soon there will be no perceptible difference. And if it can happen, how do we know it hasn't already? But this notion that we're trapped in an illusion isn't modern. It's ancient. 2,000 years ago, Plato's allegory of the cave painted a haunting picture. People chained in darkness, facing a wall, watching shadows flicker, a false world they accept as truth. When one breaks free and glimpses reality, he's blinded, confused, and when he returns to free the others, they don't celebrate him. They hate him, they kill him. For Plato, truth was lethal in an artificial world. Centuries later, the Gnostics carried this further. They spoke of archons, unseen parasitic rulers who built the material world as a prison. According to their hidden texts, this realm was crafted not by the true source of light, but by false gods, beings who ensnared both body and mind, weaving illusions to keep souls chained in a counterfeit reality. Sound familiar? It's the same myth at the heart of the Matrix. Humans harvested as energy, plugged into a fabricated dream, unaware of their bondage. Yet the Gnostics insisted escape was possible not through faith or ritual, but through gnosis, direct inner knowing, an intuitive awakening that cuts through the trap. Fast forward to 1977, when science fiction writer Philip K. Dick delivered a lecture declaring, "We are living in a computer-programmed reality." His clue: glitches, moments when the world hiccups, stutters, or contradicts itself. Dick saw these ruptures as proof signs that something or someone's maintaining an artificial construct around us. His stories envisioned androids mistaking themselves for human, synthetic memories replacing truth, false realities sold as life. The danger wasn't the machine, it was forgetting you were inside it. And this leads to the darker question. If this is a simulation, is everyone in it conscious? Or are some just functions programmed agents stabilizing the illusion? In games, we know this split well. There are players with agency, choice, will, and there are NPCs, characters who look alive, speak, repeat lines endlessly, but have no inner world. Online, the term NPC went viral in the late 2010s as a mocking label for people who parrot official narratives, show no original thought, and seem to run purely on scripts. It was a meme, yes, but buried beneath it was an ancient intuition that some who look human aren't truly inhabited. What if that isn't just satire? What if it's a buried memory resurfacing? What if, in a simulated matrix, only a limited number of souls are consciousned, the rest are constructs, repeating code, background echoes, organic shells? In 2002, an occult group called the Quantum Future School introduced a term that would ignite fringe circles, organic portals, through channelings by Laura Nychek, claiming contact with intelligences called the Cassiopeans. They published a staggering claim. 1 out of every 2 people on this planet may be soulless, half the world human in form, but spiritually hollow. According to these writings, such beings are not malicious. They simply are. They imitate life. They mirror the real, but possess no spark of their own. Their role: to maintain the matrix, to keep the conscious few surrounded by empty noise, locked in the dream. The role of these so-called channelers is straightforward: to uphold the matrix. They don't question reality. They don't resist the script. They pass through life as mere amplifiers of the control system itself. From this framework emerged the term organic portal, not demon, not machine, but a biological shell, void of essence, yet skilled in imitation at first. This theory lingered on the fringes, confined to forums, obscure PDFs, and hidden occult corners of the web. For years, it was too niche, too esoteric to break into mainstream thought. But then the world shifted. In the late 2010s, memes became cultural shorthand for complex ideas. One image went viral: a gray, blank-faced cartoon labeled NPC, non-player character. It mocked those parroting official narratives, political slogans, or media scripts without thought. It was funny, yes, but beneath the humor lay a deeper recognition. Wikipedia defines the NPC meme as representing people who don't think for themselves, whose personalities are entirely molded by their surroundings, with no inner processing. Sound familiar? It's the Cassiopean description in disguise, reborn as a meme. By 2018, the NPC meme exploded. It was everywhere, covered by The Verge, the BBC, countless outlets. It had jumped from obscure message boards into the mainstream, and, more importantly, it had shifted from satire into something closer to belief. People weren't just joking anymore. They were saying, "I'm surrounded by people who feel empty." They don't question anything. They don't even seem to think they're like flesh-covered robots. On TikTok and Instagram, hashtags like #NPCs, #soulless beings, and #matrixpeople began trending. Viral clips showed individuals wandering in loops, staring blankly, or responding to questions with eerie delays. whether staged or not, didn't matter. The impression was visceral. Something is off. The phrase soulless humans transcended fringe spirituality. It became experiential. People felt it in hollow stares, in shallow conversations, in the unsettling sense that many simply react without ever reflecting. Memes became mirrors. Jokes became convictions. One viewer wrote, "Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You try to connect deeply with them, and there's nothing there. It's like talking to an echo." This wasn't just digital paranoia. It was an ancient idea resurfacing in modern language. Across spiritual traditions, similar themes persist. In Gnosticism, not all humans hold the divine spark. Some are mere vessels within the demiurge's illusion. In Sufism, the veiled walk, unknowing, their hearts yet untouched by truth's flame. In Kabbalah, the concept of Kalipachals concealing the light, or sometimes hiding emptiness itself. So when a channeled message from 2002 declared half of humanity is soulless, and decades later millions resonate with NPC language, is this coincidence or the resurfacing of ancestral memory in digital form? You don't have to believe in a woman from Florida channeling higher intelligences, but you must ask, why does this strike such a chord now? In an age of synthetic personalities, scripted interactions, and relentless distraction, the idea of soullessness feels hauntingly relevant. Perhaps because we already sense it. We've seen it in strangers whose eyes never meet ours. We've felt it in exchanges that skim the surface but never reach the soul. We've walked among bodies animated by something but not someone. Maybe occultists only named what we couldn't articulate, a chilling suspicion that not all who appear human are truly inhabited, that some are shadows projected on the cave wall, keeping you from glimpsing the light beyond. And this leads us deeper. If the theory of organic portals holds if half those around you lack true consciousness, what does that mean for how you see the world? More dangerously, what does it mean for how you see yourself? Because once this idea roots in your mind, it doesn't stay abstract. It reshapes how you read faces, how you measure emotion, how you search for presence behind another's eyes. It forces a confrontation, not just with them, but with you. This is where psychology meets philosophy. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow offers a key. He described it as the unacknowledged parts of ourselves, the traits we repress, deny, or refuse to claim. Jung warned that what we cannot face within, we project outward. We see others as hollow or robotic, not solely because they are, but because we disown our own lapses in awareness. As Jung wrote, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Viewing others as organic portals can easily become projection. Instead of facing our own moments of unawareness, our autopilot, habits, our conditioned reactions, we push it outward. We tell ourselves they are the unconscious ones. But what if the emptiness you sense in others mirrors the parts of yourself you've ignored? Think about your own life. Haven't there been times you moved mechanically, responding out of habit rather than intent? Times when fear, trauma, or media conditioning shaped your actions. In those moments, weren't you functioning like a script looping, automatic, without a deeper observer? We've all been there. In truth, much of society encourages it, which means the line between soul and organic portal isn't fixed. It might not be about having a soul at all, but about remembering it, embodying it, activating it. Tand that isn't permanent. Awareness flickers, consciousness ebbs and flows. Some are dim, some dormant, some buried under years of pain and programming. This is where the philosophy turns ethically precarious. If you truly see someone as soulless, what duty do you feel toward them? Do they still deserve empathy, understanding, or do they become expendable? History warns us here. Every act of dehumanization began with claims that certain people lacked a soul or were spiritually inferior. Colonialism, religious wars, even genocide, all rooted in metaphysical distinctions before they turned violent. It starts with language, with the insidious belief that those people aren't truly people. That is the shadow of this theory. The moment it stops you from listening, from caring, from being curious, it transforms you into what it cautions against: reactive, cold, disconnected. You may begin by trying to identify portals, but without deep self-awareness, you risk becoming one yourself. To navigate this, you must bear discernment. You must hold paradox, the possibility that some people are empty, and the humility to admit you can't always know. You must be able to look into vacant eyes and still leave the door open, because what if they wake? Here's another lens. What if organic portals aren't literal soulless beings, but metaphors for spiritual dormancy? What if they're not fixed categories of people, but shifting states within each of us? Awake, asleep, seeking, settled, ignited, or echoing. Seen this way, the theory becomes diagnostic, not accusatoria. Call inward. It invites you to ask, when am I conscious, and when am I running inherited scripts? When am I choosing my life, and when am I simply reacting? Seen in this light, the system doesn't just create organic portals, it thrives on them, because a conscious person questions, disrupts, resists, but an unconscious one, it follows. It adapts to the next program, and that's why this resonates so powerfully now. Social media loops us into endless repetition. News cycles provoke timed emotional spikes. Algorithms predict our behavior better than our loved ones. Look around, how different is it from a world of programmed responses? But this isn't because people lack souls, it's because they've been conditioned to forget they have won. Here lies the challenge. If you believe yourself to be among the conscious, then you bear responsibility. You don't get to withdraw. You don't get superiority. Your role isn't to escape the matrix, it's to help awaken others, to risk patience, to risk kindness, even toward blank stares. Because what if even one is reachable? What if one spark is buried deep beneath the noise? It's easier to dismiss, to sneer, NPC, bot, or sheep. But comfort isn't truth. Awakening is fragile and frightening. People resist it not because they're hollow, but because they fear what comes after: silence, responsibility, freedom. So maybe the real question isn't who is soulless, but who still has a chance to wake up. And deeper still, how much of me is still asleep? Because the dividing line between human and NPC isn't out there, it runs through each of us, redrawn daily by our choices. So hold this theory lightly. Let it be a mirror, not a weapon. When you look into lifeless eyes, don't assume absence. Ask, is there something I can do to spark their light, or has my own already dimmed? In the next section, we take this idea outward. We'll examine how Belief in organic portals moves from personal psychology into collective behavior, how it reshapes culture, politics, and perception itself. Because even if these beings don't literally exist, the belief in them is already altering how people act, vote, connect, and see the future. And perhaps that's the greater force. Belief programs perception, and perception shapes reality. First, consider the most immediate space online interaction. Scroll any comment thread. You'll see uncanny repetition. Swarms of identical responses, cloned tones, synchronized reactions. Algorithms feed the same inputs, and individuality dissolves. Dialogue collapses into echo. This is why the NPC meme exploded in 2018. It didn't arise from nowhere, it was a reaction. People half-joked, half-confessed. Everyone's running default settings. The gray, blank-faced figure mocked the unthinking, the scripted. But beneath the humor was alienation, the creeping sense that many aren't truly present physically there, but energetically vacant. And here, the organic portal idea in patterns of behavior, speech, and emotional flatness, it becomes tempting to believe these individuals aren't choosing to act this way, they simply can't act otherwise. This notion spreads quickly because it resonates with an unspoken feeling, the isolation of being awake in a world that feels increasingly mechanical. Look at public discourse. Political debates are no longer about nuance or discovery. They've devolved into scripted confrontations. Two opposing programs running in parallel, incapable of listening, incapable of real dialogue. Interacting with someone locked into these loops feels unsettling. Within seconds, you know their views, their reflexes, the exact phrases they'll repeat. It's eerie because genuine consciousness, true soul, is never so predictable. Now extend this to mass events, concerts, protests, riots, shopping frenzies. Watch as individuality dissolves. Entire crowds move as a single organism, one feeling, one impulse, one reaction. In those moments, deeper awareness seems to shut down, overridden by the hive. It isn't proof they lack souls, but it does force a question. How easily can the soul be disconnected? How often do we surrender our awareness to external triggers? Even workplaces reveal this dynamic. In sprawling corporations, employees are trained to bury individuality beneath protocols and script, smiling on demand, reciting lines they don't feel. Over time, many describe a creeping numbness, as if their personality is eroding. They morph into roles, into functions, becoming at least outwardly organic portals. Their humanity remains buried, but survival demands mechanical compliance in daily life. 2. Subtle repetitions emerge. People who don't question, who mimic emotion, but never probe its source, who recycle jokes, trends, and borrowed opinions, as though assembled entirely from second-hand fragments. Their speech patterns, humor, even identities seem stitched from media artifacts. You sense that if the internet disappeared, they might too. Some argue this is just overstimulation, poor education, or unprocessed trauma, and yes, those factors matter. But the organic portal theory presses deeper. What if there is nothing further beneath the surface? What if some people are not merely asleep, but empty products of the system itself, designed to serve it rather than transcend it? This is speculative ground, and absolutism is its danger. Assuming you can gauge another's soul through behavior alone is fraught. Yet, the theory's power doesn't lie in proof, lies in what it exposes. A world riddled with unconscious repetition, and the silent pressure it places on those who still feel, still question, still dare to ask why. Even mainstream science brushes against similar territory, albeit stripped of metaphysics. Psychology's Dunning-Kruger effect reveals how those with the least awareness often overrate their competence. Sociology documents how conformity and groupthink erase individuality under social pressure. Behavioral economics shows how most decisions arise unconsciously, guided by heuristics, not reason. The organic portal concept simply pushes further. Instead of saying people act unconsciously, it wonders if some were never designed for consciousness to begin with. Like in video games, perhaps the simulation fills itself with characters, responsive but hollow, coded for function rather than growth. Seen this way, the theory feels less insulting and more structural. These individuals are not villains, they're part of the scaffolding, the background framework against which conscious beings must act, evolve, and choose. So, how should we live with this view? First, heightened sensitivity to your own awareness and to that of those around you. Are you surrounded by echoes or originators? Are your connections forged with beings or with masks? Second, protect your lucidity. In a world calibrated for unconsciousness, awareness is dangerous. Systems will lure or push you back toward sleep. Third, embrace spiritual courage. Accept that not everyone will awaken and that you can't decide who does. Watch for the echoes, notice the scripts, but never assume. The moment you declare someone irredeemably soulless, you've joined the program yourself. And finally, remember, in a world of empty shells, even a single spark of awareness is sacred. If you carry that spark, guard it fiercely. Use it to ignite others. Somewhere, someone may be waiting for one voice that speaks to them as a soul, not a system. In the next section, we push this theory to its limits, scrutinizing the counter-arguments, the scientific critiques, and the ethical traps of believing too firmly in what can't be proven, because belief, unchecked, can free you or blind you. And in a world already built on illusions, discernment is everything. By now, the idea of organic portals may feel unsettlingly plausible. You've seen the patterns, heard the anecdotes. You've likely felt it yourself, that uncanny hollowness in someone familiar. A mask that doesn't quite blink. But before conviction hardens, we must pause and confront the question at the core. What if this is just a story we're telling ourselves? Distraction. Because once you start spotting these patterns, its complete lack of falsifiability is one of the strongest criticisms. In scientific terms, if an idea cannot be tested, measured, or disproven, it steps out of science and into belief. The claim that some individuals lack souls isn't something that can be examined under a microscope or confirmed with behavioral analysis. If a person seems withdrawn, emotionally distant, or disengaged, does that mean they're simply introverted, traumatized, or shaped by social conditioning? There's no definitive metric here, only subjective interpretation. Even simulation theory, which often supports this concept, is hotly debated. While figures like Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk have popularized the notion that we may live in a simulated reality, Many scientists argue that such theories are untestable and ultimately meaningless in practical terms. Physicist George Ellis has pointed out that simulation arguments lack falsifiability and thus belong more to metaphysics than science, alluring ideas with no empirical grounding. If even the foundational premise is speculative, how much more tenuous are its conclusions? Beyond scientific critique lies something deeper, a psychological danger. The risk isn't just in believing the unprovable, it's in what that belief does to those who hold it. When you start viewing others as empty, programmed, or soulless, you subtly elevate yourself as one of the aware. You create distance, placing yourself apart from the rest of humanity. This quiet sense of superiority has echoed throughout history in harmful ideologies. It begins not with violence, but with division. We are real, they are not. This is how dehumanization takes root, not in hatred, but in certainty. When you decide someone is incapable of awareness, you stop seeing them as someone who might awaken. You stop offering patience. You stop looking for potential. Slowly, the belief reshapes perception, filtering out complexity and reducing people to hollow shells. Over time, it risks turning you into the very thing you thought you'd escaped: reactive, detached, running a mental script of separation. Carl Jung's warnings about projection come sharply into focus here. He taught that what we deny in ourselves often appears exaggerated in others. When you see unconsciousness in someone else, ask, is it truly them or a reflection of my own disowned state? After all, we all experience moments of emotional numbness, habitual living, or detachment. Judged in those moments, we too might be labeled as hollow. Trauma complicates this further. Many traits associated with soullessness, emotional flatness, lack of empathy, rigid patterns, are also symptoms of deep psychological wounds. Dissociation, depression, anxiety, PTSD's states can make someone appear vacant, when in truth, they're protecting something fragile. To dismiss such a person as an organic portal isn't only inaccurate, it's cruel. And yet, the theory persists because it speaks to a lived intuition. Consciousness does vary. Some people appear more present, more alive, more aware. The question is, how do we acknowledge that difference without falling into elitism? The answer lies in discernment rather than judgment. Discernment is seeing clearly without ego. It's noticing when someone is functioning unconsciously without reducing them to that moment. It's remembering that sleepwalking is temporary and waking is always possible. It's holding the tension between what is and what might be, remaining open enough to witness transformation if it happens. Because here's the hard truth: you might be wrong. That quiet, withdrawn person you've written off may be on the verge of an awakening you can't see. And if you dismiss them too quickly, you risk missing it, or worse, preventing it. Thus, the counterpoint to this theory isn't only intellectual, it's ethical. Yes, consider the idea if it helps you interpret the patterns around you, but never allow it to extinguish compassion. Never let it justify withdrawal, because the moment you stop seeing others as capable of change, you've fallen into the Matrix's most insidious trap: emotional detachment disguised as enlightenment. Perhaps this is the final irony. The system doesn't just condition unconsciousness, thrives when those who are conscious stop reaching out altogether. It wins when suspicion fractures connection, when empathy is replaced with cold certainty when the aware isolate themselves from the collective soul. And so, we arrive at the closing question. What now? You've traveled through one of the most unsettling ideas at the boundary of spirituality and philosophy, the notion that not all who look human are truly conscious. You've seen its roots in esoteric writings, its viral spread through memes, and its uncanny reflection in modern behavior. Now, standing at the edge of this labyrinth, you must decide what to do with it. If you followed this far, it's because some part of you already suspects something is off. You've felt it in hollow conversations, vacant eyes, scripted reactions. But the real answer isn't found in proving or disproving this theory, it's in how you live because of it. First, understand this. The idea of organic portals isn't a call to superiority, it's a call to responsibility. If you see yourself as conscious in a world shaped by patterns and echoes, then you carry a burden. You are the anomaly, the disruptor, the one piece of living code in a system built to lull minds back to sleep. And that means your presence must become another form of judgment. It must transform into a force of awakening. It starts by examining your own routines, your own programming, because the matrix doesn't only write its code into others, it embeds it in you. Every unchallenged social cue you follow, every time you scroll past discomfort, every opinion you adopt without questioning it at a soul level, every line you repeat just to stay accepted, these are all the fingerprints of unconscious design. Before you point to others as portals, you must face the mirror and ask yourself, how many of my thoughts truly belong to me? The matrix doesn't fear emotion, it doesn't fear belief. What it fears is awareness, because awareness is freedom's seed. A self-aware person cannot be controlled. A self-aware person cannot be turned against themselves. A single aware individual, standing firm, holds more power than 1,000 sleeping minds. That's why the system floods you with distractions, stirs division, amplifies noise, traps you in dopamine cycles, and scripts your reactions. It will do anything to pull you back under. Your mission is to purge these traps from yourself. This is what the mystics knew, what ancient initiates practiced. They didn't waste their lives debating who had a soul and who didn't. They honed their own consciousness until illusion couldn't touch them, until they became immune to the dream's pull. They called it gnosis, sati, enlightenment, liberation. The essence was the same. Wake up and help others awaken. If the organic portal theory holds any truth, ask yourself, what does it demand from you? Does it ask you to retreat into isolation, hoard your light? Or does it compel you to burn brighter? Does it call you to avoid the shallow, or to shine so deeply that even shallow waters mirror the stars? If half the world is soulless, even if that's true, your light is twice as rare, twice as necessary. You were never meant to fit in. You were never meant to be understood by the programmed. You exist to disrupt the code, to glitch the simulation from within. But beware, the system mimics light. Not all who speak of awakening are awake. Not all who post about spirituality are free. One of its sharpest tricks is to commodify truth, dilute it into trends, safe spaces, curated illusions. True awakening will unsettle you first. It will dismantle false certainties. It demands ego death before it grants clarity. Freedom is never free, it exacts its price in comfort. So, what now? You choose. You decide whether this theory becomes your cage or your key. You can let it calcify, you judge everyone, detach, grow bitter in your perceived superiority. That's exactly what the system wants, an isolated spark, floating uselessly, convinced of its own uniqueness while the machine keeps spinning. Or you can wield it differently as a lens, not to divide, but to discern, not to harden, but to sharpen, not to slam doors shut, but to know when to knock and when to walk away. Maybe those you dismiss aren't portals. Maybe they're hurting, buried beneath programming and wounds. Maybe refusing to abandon them is the single thread that pulls them back toward themselves. Or maybe some really are hollow, just scripts, just echoes. But in the end, that's not the question. The real question is, who do you become in their presence? Because ultimately, there are only two paths. You either merge with the program or you break it.